It's time to talk sports. It's Hacksaw's Headlines, a panorama of the world of sports, stories, comments, and opinions.
Touchdown, San Diego!
Now, here's iconic sports talk show host Lee Hacksaw Hamilton and co-host John Riley.
Who wants to talk sports on a Monday? We do. From the Dixieline Lumber and Home Center studios in San Diego, we welcome you to our Monday bonus podcast, Hacksaw's Headlines. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Lee Hacksaw Hamilton, along with my co-host, getting ready to watch the World Series from left field, John Riley. We welcome you coming off a great sports weekend. This podcast is brought to you by Dixieline Lumber and Home Centers, 9 locations to serve you in San Diego. You've got projects, they've got materials, you want ideas, they can be your consultant and be your best friend, Dixieline Lumber. John Riley, good afternoon. What a wild weekend we had. What an unbelievable week we have ahead of us. And here comes the World Series. Oh, what a cool time of year.
It really is. Yeah. I mean, we got the 2 biggest teams in America in the World Series, crazy games in the NFL, and college basketball is about to start.
Okay, before we get rolling on topics on the table, just a couple of business items. We invite you to join our team. You're on social media. I want you to type up my name, my handle, at Hacksaw1090, at Hacksaw1090, and hit the follow button. Want you to be with me on Twitter, on X. Every time I post something on Twitter, you'll get the alert there. We want you to share. We want you to subscribe to what we're doing with this podcast on the YouTube channel. Tell all your friends we're here Mondays and Thursdays at 1 p.m. At the same time, want you to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Thereby, you will also get the alerts every time we put something up on the YouTube channel, which is quite often during the course of the week. We also want you to give us a thumbs up. If you can, give us a 5-star rating. We need all the friends we can get. And I want you to check my website, LeeHacksawHamilton.com. I write on it every day. I dare you to compare what's on my website to what you're trying to read in your newspaper, which probably has a page and a half of content. I think you'll find what we do on a day-in, day-out basis is really good. Just LeeHacksawHamilton.com. That's the website. Check it when we're done. Also, when you go to the homepage on my website, there's an orange box in the upper right-hand corner. Fill it out. Become part of Hacksaw's Insiders Group. So we're going lots of different directions on this podcast, but when we are done with our segments, you're invited to pile in, pile on, take part in what we call Fans Forum. And from left field, John Riley will describe how Fans Forum works.
Yeah, Fans Forum is your chance to get involved and have questions for Hacksaw in the world of sports. So just type in your comments and questions on Facebook, X, or YouTube. And I'll tell you what, Lee, there has been so many people that are giving you crap about wearing that Dodger sweatshirt last weekend. So it's going to be fun. Now, the Fans Forum, our people are already piling in.
I get a lot of crap from everybody on a lot of topics on the table. Yes, thank you very much. John, October baseball's been special. These playoffs have been amazing. The ups, the downs, the mood swings, the mistakes, the big hits, the unbelievable pitching, the failures on the mound. And now we go to the World Series. It starts on Friday, and that is your topic. Fall Classic equals memories. And we got the Dodgers, and we got the Yankees in the World Series. First things first, let's talk about the Dodgers. How they have survived, to me, is the most amazing thing. It's pretty inspiring. Ragtag pitching staff destroyed by injuries, losing their first baseman, who's a shell of himself right now with an ongoing ankle problem, and yet they've survived the bullpen days more times than not. They got 2 established starting pitchers and then volunteers. John, it's been absolutely amazing what the Dodgers did. And they finally wore out and put away the New York Mets, and their bats beat the New York Mets' arms. The pitching staff of the Mets was pretty good, and Peter Alonso couldn't really do it by himself. I am just so impressed with the fact the Dodgers are playing baseball this coming Friday in the Fall Classic. I would have never imagined this. And here's an asterisk to that comment. In the 9th inning of the broadcast on Sunday night, as the Dodgers were destroying the Mets in that final game and clinching the World Series ticket, the broadcasters spent the entire 9th inning talking about the demise of the Padres. What a shocker. They use all types of descriptions to talk about the most complete team that everybody around the nation thought could be in the World Series and how they failed. They used every word in the dictionary except the word choker. I can't imagine how hard it is to be a Padre right now, knowing what you had right at your doorstep, what you had with a 2-1 lead against the teams now going to the World Series, and what you let get away. So that, to me, is the Dodgers were just pounding the Mets on Sunday. Just the thundering comments coming out of the mouth of John Smoltz for the most part. He called the Padres everything but chokers. So in retrospect, let's talk about the Dodger accomplishment, but go ahead, comment on the asterisk. Did the Padres choke this thing away, and how ghastly is it? They're not playing this week.
Yeah, well, the Padres choked. I mean, there's no doubt about it. But I'll tell you what, I mean, we've gone through decades of misery, but at least the Padres are relevant, even though they may have choked. But you got to tip a hat to the Dodgers. They made it to the dance, so let's see what happens.
The Yankees, they dispatched Cleveland, snap of the fingers. I thought they would. Yankees, it's obviously Judge. It's Soto. And Giancarlo Stanton has come back from the dead. He had 4 home runs this past week in the playoff series against Cleveland. The Yankees' batting order is really good. And then you add in role players who get things accomplished. And I'm talking about Gleyber Torres. I'm talking about the shortstop. I'm talking about Verdugo, the outfielder. Yankees have got depth in the batting order that really makes a difference. This Volpe kid, I think, is unbelievably unsung. The big issue with the Yankees, they got 3 starters. I just don't know if the Yankees have anywhere near enough in the bullpen, and that becomes a big issue. But the Yankees are really doggone good. And Cleveland tried hard, but Cleveland just did not have enough bats. And, yeah, they had an occasional home run from Fry or from Mr. Christmas, Noel. Ramirez, they pitched around him. Cleveland kind of ran out of starting pitching. They're a really young team. And, of course, I flip back to the whole full season work. Team batting average at .238, and they did get the American League Championship Series. So you got the Yankees. What do you think about the Pinstripers, the Bronx Bombers?
Well, we kind of all saw this coming, right? I mean, I think the American League playoffs are not nearly as competitive as the National League side. And the only other team I thought really had a chance to knock off the Yankees might have been Baltimore, but they got knocked out in the first round. So here we go. It's just like 1982-81 all over again.
Yeah, and this has been an unbelievable rivalry between these two. There's so much tradition. This is a 22nd World Series between these two teams going back to the early 1900s. 1981, the Yankees, the Dodgers, spectacular. It's the 41st World Series the Yankees have played in. Think about that going back to the early 1900s.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, they were dominant, went bad, and then came back again. So this is such a rivalry. I remember, because I grew up on Long Island, I remember Yankee Brooklyn Dodger World Series games in the 50s, and then obviously into the 60s, and then of course the Dodgers are out here on the West Coast. So it's a great rivalry. I think everybody's going to be tuned into Ohtani versus Judge. Obviously, you got frontline pitching. You got Garrett Cole and 2 others. The Dodgers have got 2 starters and then bullpen days. I don't know how to read this thing. I could say pick 'em, pal, because either one could win it. Either one could blow it and get screwed out of it. It's going to be a fun fall classic. What do you think?
I think the Dodgers are going to win it. I mean, I really do. I mean, because you said that they have the role players on the Yankees, but the role players for the Dodgers, like Tommy Edman, just really stepped up. And a lot of these other guys are surprising us in so many different ways. But I remember the 81 World Series. That was Fernando Valenzuela, the strike-shortened season. Didn't they face off in 77 and 78 as well? Mm-hmm. I remember that as a kid. So this, I mean, as a baseball fan, this is going to be fun to watch. I'm kind of take my Padre fandom and set it aside. But I think the Dodgers are going to win this in 5 or 6.
Yeah, I misspoke. This is the 22nd time the Dodgers have been in the World Series. They've faced the Yankees 12 times.
Okay.
Yankees have won 8. The Dodgers have won 3 world titles against the Yankees.
All right.
So, interesting. You're a baseball fan. I'm sure you have an opinion. I don't know whether you want to couch it under the idea the Dodgers earn this, the Yankees have this right to do this, or the Padres choke their opportunity away. pick one of those angles, jump into Fans Forum right now so you get in line. Because the longer we go, the more people are going to be there getting ready to bark at me. They're not going to bark at him. But if you got an opinion, Dodgers versus Yankees, or did the Padres choke this thing away? Are you embittered by what Padre baseball became? Okay, we'll go from that. We got other baseball topics to talk
from
about.
the big money teams to the teams that have some interesting storylines in small markets.
Yeah, there's an awful lot of unique things here that we have to talk about. Let me get you the update on the Tampa Bay Rays, the homeless team in the American League. They can't play at Tropicana Field. There are more developments over this weekend into this morning. St. Petersburg, which is on the hook for any financial repairs at Tropicana Field, the Suncoast Dome, is of the opinion this is an insurance-related thing. The insurance companies say this was not an act of God. Well, I don't know what a hurricane would be. Insurance companies are trying to back away from having to foot the $55 million fee it would take to replace the entire paneled roof. Tampa Bay sent people to Orlando over the weekend for the second time. They are looking seriously at playing maybe the entire season at the Disney World Stadium. It's a spring training stadium that seats 9,800, could be expanded to over 10,000 because they can't play at Tropicana Field. And it does not appear that St. Petersburg wants to renovate Tropicana Field because the thing's going to be torn down in 3 years when the Rays go across the bridge and play in the new stadium in St. Petersburg. They've looked at so many other venues, but they had people went to Montreal a week ago. But the Olympic Stadium in Montreal, former home of the Expos, is currently under massive renovation, $870 million renovation. It's a construction zone, and the Canadian government says nobody can play in that facility while the construction's going on. So Montreal is definitely out. I don't think they want to play any type of games in Nashville. They don't want to go to Charlotte. They don't want to play some games in Portland in minor league stadiums. The Players Association says, no, we're not going to let you make this be a traveling show. So that is the latest situation there. It looks like Orlando might be the landing spot, not just to start the season, but Orlando might host them for 3 seasons because they can't repair Tropicana Field, or at least St. Pete doesn't want to pay the bill. And the insurance companies are saying, not us. So that's an interesting angle there. Awful situation in Denver. Dick Monfort, Colorado Rockies, at $147 million payroll this year, lost 100 games again. Charlie Blackmon is retiring. They're cutting their payroll. They're cutting from 147, subtract Blackmon's $13 million, so that takes him down to 134. They're attempting to trade 2 of their veteran pitchers, Quantrill and Gomber. They're trying to get to $120 million payroll in what used to be a franchise that drew 4 million fans in Denver and the Rocky Mountain region.
Wow.
That's the latest situation. They've got a really good group of young players that finished the season up on an upbeat note. They kind of spoiled the party for a bunch of teams who are fighting in the playoffs. They don't have enough pitching, but they are going to get a Herman Marquez. They got Kyle Freeland back off the disabled list. They're not going to have enough, but they want a payroll in the 120s, not the 147s, surely not the 180s. It's a bad scenario there. And the last topic here involves Diamond Sports, Bally Sports Networks, in bankruptcy court. Diamond Sports has just reached an agreement with FanDuel to become part owner. Their cash infusion has allowed Diamond now to make a presentation to the bankruptcy people who are ready to come out of bankruptcy, approve this funding so we can go back to operate. They went back to the teams they had cut loose. They told 11 major league teams, we're opting out of the contract. We'll do your games next year. You got to take a big pay cut. The only one that's taking a pay cut is Miami. But with this new money from FanDuel, they think they're going to evolve and emerge out of bankruptcy. The other 10 teams, though, that they cut loose, the Minnesota Twins, Houston, etc., the Angels, no, we're not doing business with you. We're not taking a massive pay cut because you made a mistake and can't fund it. Those teams are going to wind up under the MLB umbrella like the Padres have had, a successful broadcast. I don't know financially how close they are to what they used to get in San Diego, but it looks as if MLB streaming is going to add at least 10 teams, maybe even a couple more because of this bankruptcy thing. That's the latest on Bally Sports. Is your backyard big enough for Tampa Bay Rays to play home games here? Hey, this TV studio is big enough. Your comments on the Rays, the Rocks, and what's going to be or not be on your TV in baseball next season?
Well, as far as the Rays are concerned, I understand they're looking at these minor league stadiums, but 10,000, that's just so small. Remember when the Dodgers moved to L.A. and originally they played in the L.A. Coliseum? And granted, it was a really short to left field, but they had that big net. I mean, imagine doing that in an NFL stadium, especially like an indoor stadium where you don't have to deal with the humidity. I mean, that could work, so why not pursue some of those options?
Well, Tampa Bay Buccaneers' new stadium is a football stadium. You couldn't put a baseball field in a rectangular football stadium. Mm-hmm. The problem they have is, where do they go play? You're going to move out of state? That's not going to work. What do you do to your fan base? What do you do to your TV market if you're playing games in Charlotte?
Well, why not Jacksonville? I mean, they've got a football stadium there.
Yeah, but it's a football stadium. These new football stadiums are built like rectangles. They're not built like the LA Coliseum where you can actually lay a diamond in and have different dimensions. Now these things are too tightly fit. So
okay.
So I mean they've shopped and they've looked. It looks like they're going to be in Orlando, 10,000 seats. They'll do some adjustments. Their union has to sign off on this. But hell, the union just agreed to what's going to happen to the Oakland Athletics up in Sacramento, so I can't see them throwing a roadblock here. But Ray's got a real problem. They're having to be dislocated for 3 full calendar years is not good, because I don't see any sugar daddy coming down the road and saying, I'll pay the $55 million to put a roof on the Suncoast Dome.
Yeah, just for a few years. I mean, that's a stupid investment.
Yeah, exactly. So that's where we are there. I'm surprised at Al Lang Field and some of the other spring training sites where they're close, but they are much smaller. I mean, they're like 6,000 seats. They've been talked to go down the road to Port Charlotte, their spring training headquarters. That's like a 5,800-seat minor league ballpark. You're not going to play Major League Baseball, 5,800-seat capacity. So we got that. And then you got the Colorado Rockies and Diamond Sports. Solve those problems.
Monfort is a disgrace in Denver. That guy is one of the worst owners in Major League Baseball.
Yeah, line up right behind John Fisher in Oakland.
Exactly. I mean, it's just ridiculous that he's trying to cut payroll. I mean, just, run this like a business and create some hype, get some good players in. And granted, he got cursed by Chris Bryant, but to me, that's just terrible, the whole thing. And I feel sorry for Bud Black, and he's kind of stuck there. And as far as Bally is concerned, I think, I wouldn't trust Bally if I were one of those other major league teams. You don't know if they're in or out. You don't know what's going to go on with, is it FanDuel or DraftKings is sponsoring? You don't know how stable that relationship is. If MLB can provide a solution, I think that is a win for MLB and for those individual teams. And who knows, the more they get into that group, into that pot that can share resources and scale, then I think, there might only be 3 or 4 teams that would opt out, like the Red Sox and the Yankees and the Dodgers.
Exactly. Okay, that's topics on the table in baseball. You got a solution to Tampa Bay. How big's your backyard? Where should they go? Jonas and Fans Forum, jump on board. John, we go from that to a busy weekend of big games in the NFL.
Yeah, here we go. Crazy games in the NFL. Some of these were just wild.
Minnesota, Detroit. Man, that was like a playoff game. I mean, the intensity, the fans were going crazy up in Minnesota, and up and down the field they went. And when they got to the finish line, Jared Goff did it again. I mean, this is a guy that couldn't manage games with the Rams, who went to Detroit as a throw-in the Matthew Stafford trade. Jared Goff on Sunday, 22 of 25, throwing the football for 280. And St. Brown, the wide receiver, had 112 yards in receptions. The young running back, Jahmyr Gibbs, had 116 rushing. And Detroit held off Minnesota. Detroit knocked Minnesota out of the ranks from the unbeaten. Man, that was like a playoff game. Second game, Green Bay, Houston. Jordan Love. He might not be a superstar, but he's damn close to being a superstar. Bad knee and all. 220 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, couple of picks. Green Bay outgunned Houston. The big storyline, nobody's paying any attention to Green Bay's defense. They've reworked that defense. They've changed everything. 4 quarterback sacks of C.J. Stroud. They held C.J. Stroud to 89 yards passing. They chased him all over the place.
Wow.
Green Bay really, really did a job beating Houston. Kansas City, San Francisco. How bizarre is this? Kansas City is unbeaten. Mahomes throws 2 more interceptions. Patrick Mahomes has 8 picks, no deep passing game, partial running game, and Travis Kelce. And they're still winning. What a job by Andy Reid. San Francisco, I mean, they are really hurting. Brock Purdy, 3 picks. He's being asked to carry the entire load. There is no Christian McCaffrey. They're not running the ball. And now the worst of all times, they lose Brandon Ayuk, torn knee ligament. Ooh. And they paid him all that money after all that holdout. And the guy is averaging 3 receptions a game, has not caught a touchdown pass this season. How'd that holdout work for the team?
Oh, God.
Holy cow. So Kansas City beats San Francisco. 49ers, they kind of look like they're on a free fall. And I don't know that Shanahan can get them out if he doesn't have players. And there's no Christian McCaffrey sighting coming. New York Jets, Pittsburgh. Wow. Aaron Rodgers and the boys are now 2-5. Think about that. Pittsburgh, Russell Wilson, ragged start. Didn't play well early, and then it was like somebody threw a light switch on, and that was vintage Russell Wilson. Moving the pocket, making plays, creating on the run. You know, he winds up throwing for 264. They came from a 15-6 deficit. Pittsburgh scored 31 points in a row against the Jets. And Aaron Rodgers, they're going to need time. And time is not against him because they got 5 losses. I still look at that depth chart and I say, man, there's a lot of firepower there. And now they got the linebacker who finally came back in after the really ugly holdout. So I think if they can win a couple games here and just stabilize themselves, I still think the Jets have the firepower to climb back into the playoff race. And then you got the Rams and the Raiders. The Rams had to win, and they did win. Real gritty defensive performance by the Rams. The Raiders' world has fallen in on them. Gardner Minshew, 4 turnovers yesterday. 3 picks and another fumble. Took a couple more sacks, took 10 hits. I mean, the Rams' defense, their kids were blitzing, and they were getting there. And the Raiders are just in a state of utter collapse. You know, the common joke around the NFL as well. Tom Brady's joined the Raiders as a minority holder, going to be a consultant to Mark Davis. Tom, did you bring your helmet and your shoulder pads? Can you play?
Really?
So the Raiders season is over. I think, with the trade of Devontae Adams, and they have no run game, offensive line is chewed up. They got Max Crosby, and everybody else across the defensive front is hurt and had surgery. Raiders tank. Raiders look out to the horizon. Shadur Sanders, number 1 pick, Colorado. Mm-hmm. So there's nothing that's going to solve the Raiders' problems because the Raiders just are not competitive, don't have the roster, and I don't even know that the leadership is correct. So those are all things NFL, things that I watched on the weekend. And what did you see?
How about that NFC Norris division? Yeah. I mean, every one of those teams is over 500. It's incredible.
Black and blue big boys.
It really was impressive. And the Vikings-Lions game, the Vikings got out to a quick start, and then the whole thing flipped, So, I mean, I love Dan Campbell. I mean, I love everything about that guy, and I'm happy for Jared Goff. I was bumming for Kevin O'Connell, but that was an exciting game. The Green Bay game, the weird thing to me was, what did you think of those uniforms? They were like all white.
I knew they were going to this white specialty. It did not dawn on me white helmets. That was the strangest part of the whole entourage of what they wore. But it worked. It worked. Might as well keep wearing it.
Well, when I first saw it, I thought it was the Chargers, and I realized, okay, it's not the Chargers.
Well, it's green and gold.
Yeah, exactly. It was just weird, because you just think of, either seeing heavy green or heavy gold. The Niners, man, they're just it's difficult right now. And Kansas City, they just know how to win. So, the Niners, that's going to be their nemesis. They got beaten by Kansas City in the Super Bowl twice. The Jets are fun to watch because Aaron Rodgers is always rolling his eyes.
And making plays.
Yeah. But, you're right. They have a ton of firepower. 2-5. I don't see how they can make the playoffs unless they just run the table here, and it's not looking good for them.
They had shots of him on the bench after, the secondary makes a mistake or a receiver drops a pass, and he's doing this all the time.
It's just so demoralizing. That's not being a team player. I mean, that's just being a prima donna. And that was what makes it so dramatic to watch the whole thing. Rams beat the Raiders. The Raiders are they're just a disgrace right now. The Rams pulled that one out. So, it was a fun day in the NFL. You even talked about it. A lot of must-see TV games.
Oh, they were just great. Now, we got two really interesting games. Monday Night Football here.
Yeah, here we go. Chargers are on the clock tonight.
Is there an ambush waiting in Arizona? I mean, this is going to be interesting to see. You got Justin Herbert, but do you know there are 6 Charger wide receivers, tight ends, and their kick returner who hardly practiced all week because of injuries? And a bunch of them might not be on the active roster. And, of course, they're down to one established running back in J.K. Dobbins because Gus Edwards is on IR again. You got Herbert, but do you have enough around Herbert? I mean, if McConkey can't play and Quentin Johnston can't play, and the starting tight end Hayden Hurst can't play because that's part of the group that was all hurt, and Darius Davis, the kick returner, can't play, and he's missed practice. How's Herbert going to cope with this? So that's an item. And the other thing, the guys wearing Arizona Cardinal red, they play really well at home. You got Kyler Murray. You've got Marvin Harrison Jr., who's now cleared concussion protocols, averaging 14 yards per catch. You got Zay Jones, who just came off IR, and he's a fast dart and dash wide receiver. You got veteran tight end Zach Ertz, who catches balls, and you got 1,000-yard, 1,400 all-purpose yard guy in running back James Conner. I don't know, is there an ambush going to happen in Arizona? The other game, that's Baltimore, that's Tampa Bay. Boy, the Ravens, for a team that built its rep, stapled right on the driver's licenses, we play Raven defense. Now suddenly, they're averaging 453 yards a game. Think about that. That's a Harbaugh-led defensive team averaging 453, where Lamar Jackson, Derek Turner, 3 young wide receivers, 2 tight ends led by Mark Andrews. That's a really good offensive team. And then Tampa Bay rolls out on the field, and Baker Mayfield has reinvented himself. He's thrown 15 touchdown passes already this season.
Awesome.
And they got Rashad White, the kid from Arizona State that's pounding the football, and Godwin and Mike Evans have a combined 10 touchdowns already this season. I mean, Baker's playing better in Tampa than Baker played in Cleveland when he was a folk hero. Now he's become a cult hero down there. So that other Monday night game is going to be good. So your thoughts on the Bolts and the Birds, your thoughts on Baltimore versus Tampa?
Well, first of all, it's weird to have 2 games on Monday night.
It's typical of the NFL, though. We're trying creating whatever.
Yeah, we're trying to, when you walked in, we were trying to look at our schedule and what time the game started. You made a list of all the Charger receivers that are out, but who's in? I mean, who can Herbert throw the ball to?
That's a huge question. Some of these guys might be active. Now, how long do they play? Are they anywhere close to 100%? That's a huge issue. Or are they going to pull wide receivers off the taxi squad? Those kids practice, but hardly any of them have played. I mean, they are limping. They've just got so many guys who are hurt that are, I get the injury report every day. Mm-hmm. I counted one day, it was Thursday, there were 16 guys who were not on the field, did not practice or were limited. Limited meant they were on the sidelines with the trainer doing stuff, but they were not taking part. Herbert's just got so many problems right now at the skill positions, and he needs McConkey and he needs Quentin Johnston.
Yeah.
So the only reputable guy what they have is a guy that's got a calf and a foot injury and he's trying to play through it is Josh Palmer.
Yeah, I was going to think that he was the only name I didn't hear you mention.
Yeah,
but what about the running backs? Are they healthy?
Well, not Gus Edwards. He's on IR. I mean, you got J.K. Dobbins and you got the young kid Vidal who had that touchdown reception last week, the last time they played. That's it.
That's not looking good for the Chargers tonight.
I mean, Justin Herbert can wing it, but can Justin Herbert wing it with whoever's left on the field to be your wide receivers? I think it's going to be a fascinating game to see.
Yeah, it's going to be good. And the other game, I love the whole Baker Mayfield thing, and how, like you say, he's like a cult hero. And it's just the way that he's been portrayed. He was like a hero in Oklahoma, goes to Cleveland. They had those what was it? Was it State Farm
Yeah,
Insurance?
the funky insurance commercials, which were great.
Yeah, and he like lived in the stadium and that whole shtick, and it was fun. And Baker Mayfield likes to have fun, and I love when the Rams signed him, and right out of the gate he was good. So I'm happy a Heisman Trophy guy is living up to his potential in Tampa. But I don't see them beating the Ravens tonight.
Yeah, this Baltimore team is so different and so explosive and so dangerous. Holy cow. You talk about going into the marketplace and finding a free agent, because at the end of last season, the rap around the NFL, the rumor around the NFL is Derrick Henry's done. He woke up an old man. He's had so many carries. Derrick Henry has had 4 monster games. I'm talking plus 100 yards in one game of 203. He's just pounding it. And then you get Lamar throwing it and Lamar running with it when he wants to. And that offense, 453 yards from a Baltimore Raven team that was known for all defense, no offense.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And when Lamar Jackson came out of Louisville, everyone was hyping him, how good he was. He won the Heisman. And I just never really understood it. I knew he could run and throw. But now we're seeing the whole package.
Well, seeing the whole package complemented by the heavy-duty back and complemented by maybe the best group of receivers. They're all young dudes who can fly. And he's not having to do it by himself because he's got that guy back there with him.
Derrick Henry is like a man among boys when he runs down the field.
Well, he gets thrown downhill. Holy cow.
Well, you were comparing him to Eric Dickerson, weren't you?
I thought you compared him to Eric Dickerson, but we were close.
But or was it Earl Campbell? We were talking about different.
There was a little bit more Earl Campbell in because Dickerson was tall. Dickerson was a long strider. Henry's not that, but Henry's got brute power in the hole. And if he gets to the next level, your linebackers can't hold this guy. He's so physical.
Well, he's a good guy to root for, too. I mean, because he hadn't had a lot of success in Tennessee. So, yeah, this will be the fun game. The Arizona Charger game is just going to be kind of weird. We're going to see which team implodes first, basically. Okay,
we get to halftime. You got a comment on NFL notes? Feel free. Talk about your favorite team. The Fans Forum chat box is now open for business. We're at halftime. Our podcast brought to you by Dixie Line Lumber and Home Centers. 9 locations to serve you in San Diego. I've bought from Dixie Line. This guy's built his house with the help from Dixie Line, including what's around a swimming pool. You got projects, build it, fix it. We guarantee in the fall of 24, going to the new year in 2025, you will enjoy it thanks to these people, Dixie Line Lumber. And back here, before we go to the second half, just a couple of reminders, all the people joining us on our live stream. At the end of our podcast, we do something called Fans Forum, where you take over this podcast and you can fire questions, make statements. We try to put the best ones up off the board on the air. John, explain to the newbies, the Rookie of the Years who just joined us, how does Fans Forum work?
Yeah, Fans Forum is your chance to ask a question to Hacksaw. You got a comment in the world of sports. Look at all these guys piling in. Greg and Johnny, Callan, Raul, Roy, Michael, John. Who else is that? Ron, 4RXLA, Bob. The list goes on and on. We're going to have a great Fans Forum segment. That'll be at the conclusion of Hacksaw's headlines.
So in the chat box, just hit the chat box there at the bottom of your computer and fire a question to us. It'll show up on our board on the right-hand side. If you like sports, we invite you to check my website. I write on it every day. First thing in the morning, as you have your first cup of coffee, hey, check LeeHacksawHamilton.com. It's all written. You'll really enjoy it. And when you go to the website, there's an orange box on the homepage. Fill that out. We want you to become part of Hacksaw's Insiders Group. You'll get alerts. You get emails virtually every day from us. Also want to remind you to share and subscribe. Tell everybody you know in your email text group. Hey, Hacksaw's on the air 1 p.m. Monday, 1 p.m. on Thursdays. If you can, share. Subscribe on the YouTube channel. That way you get the alerts every time we put something up on the YouTube channel. And we don't have any friends. We got a lot of followers, though. Give us a thumbs up. Give us a 5-star rating, because that'll really help us with the people at YouTube. So we go to the second half. Man, we got a lot to talk about here. Let's carry on. Next topic, John.
You got NFL news and notes around the league. Let's hopscotch around the NFL.
Here's a question. What makes a Hall of Fame NFL coach? Is it Super Bowl victories, far and above everything else? Is it one-loss record potential? Is it creative impact on the game? So NFL Hall of Fame ballot's got all the retired players. Then they got these other categories. the contributor category for somebody who invented something that impacts the NFL. Contributor category, somebody was a great owner, somebody was a great leader, did things on behalf of the game, did things on behalf of the players, etc. And then there's the coaches category. So they have just released the list of the finalists for the Hall of Fame coaches category. I'm going to run through this list for you. You just think about this for a second. What defines a great coach? On the list, legendary Giants and Jacksonville head coach Tom Coughlin, Denver Broncos head coach Mike Shanahan, 49ers iconic coach George Seifert. All those guys won 2 Super Bowl rings. Dan Reeves, tremendous head coach, got to the Super Bowl 4 different times. Mike Holmgren, architect in Green Bay, architect with the Seattle Seahawks. Back in the day, Chuck Knox and all the things he accomplished. Buffalo, L.A. Rams, up in Seattle. 200-win Marty Schottenheimer, never got to the Super Bowl. And the guy that invented the T formation, the single wing, and that eventually became the pro set, Clark Shaughnessy, legendary coach from back in the 1930s, 1940s, 1950s. Those are some of the 11 finalists for the Hall of Fame coaches ballot. So what defines a Hall of Fame coach? And these names here, what attracts your attention?
Well, from my point of view, you got to be a winner and you got to be an innovator in order to be, considered for the Hall of Fame. It's hard to say no to any of those names. The last guy on the list I'm not familiar with because that was a long time ago. But even guys like Chuck Knox have had great careers. Now, I don't think he ever won a Super Bowl, but, he had a very solid career. We all know Marty Schottenheimer never won a Super Bowl, but had great teams and a lot of success. But for every one of those, like Coughlin, he was kind of a nondescript guy, but it's hard to argue with 2 Super Bowls.
Thank you, Eli Manning.
Yeah, and then George Seifert, kind of took the baton from Bill Walsh. I think he's very deserving because he was a great defensive coach, too.
And Shanahan?
Oh, for sure. That was the Elway era. And, and he won 2, right? I mean, in 98 and 99, I think. So, there's a lot of great coaches on that list.
Tough call.
I mean, do they have a limit on how many they'll take?
1.
Only 1?
I believe, yes.
How in the hell do you pick just 1?
That's why the list is the list, and the great names keep getting added on.
Unbelievable.
Okay, so we got that. That's an amazing story. You remember this guy, quarterback the Broncos and quarterback the Bears? Went and became a broadcaster for about 15 minutes, didn't like it. Jay Cutler gets arrested.
Oh, God.
Former Bears-Broncos quarterback Jay Cutler arrested in Tennessee, DUI, auto accident, guns in his car. So he's charged with drunk driving, etc., illegal possession of a firearm. Now we find out when the accident occurred, do you know who I am?
Oh, God.
He asked the person whose car he hit not to call the police. Offered the person $2,000. In essence, a bribe. Person went, I've been involved in an auto accident. Jay Cutler's got a lot of problems on his hands. Why would he do that? It's over. Period, exclamation point, end of conversation about, do you really like the investment you made? I'm talking about Cleveland Browns. I'm talking about Deshaun Watson. Ruptured Achilles tendon yesterday in a non-contact play. Move in the pocket, takes a step forward into the pocket, goes down like a sack of potatoes. Ruptured Achilles tendon. They're going to do brace surgery. They think he's going to be out 8 months. What a disaster the Browns are. And now they got all this money, and they can't cut him, and they obviously don't have a quarterback. It's a big, big issue there. And then obviously the New York Jets. Now, the trade for Devontae Adams to put him into that rotation with Aaron Rodgers and all those other wide receivers and the running back Breece Hall, that's a pretty good offense. Now they get the holdout linebacker back. They ended the holdout on Sunday night, and Hassan Reddick, Pro Bowl linebacker, big pass rush specialist, who had violated his contract, refused to come to camp. He's cost himself $12 million in fines, missed game checks, and then he eradicated all the workout bonuses he had by not showing up. So he's going to make $9 million coming in. And what got him to come in, he changed agents. What got him to come in was, we'll throw some incentives into this contract where maybe you can get back the kind of money that you forfeited, $12 million. Can you imagine Well, you're weird. You might not give a crap if you lost $12 million. Can you imagine giving up $12 million in a contract dispute? Didn't win anything. He's lost half a season, but he checked in today. He reported that holdout is over. So those are the unique storylines from the NFL Notebook. We talked about the coaches. You want to talk about Cutler? You want to talk about Deshaun Watson? You got a solution that because Browns fans are on suicide watch right now. Holy cow, their season's over.
Well, first of all, Hassan Riddick came to his senses. Take the money. He's under contract. Take the money.
What's left of it?
What's left of it? But it's still what you said, like $9 million or whatever it is. So take the money. Always. Bird in the hand is better than two in the bush. So he came to his senses. The Browns are a disgrace. That whole Deshaun Watson thing, I mean, it's kind of karma in a way, coming back to get you. But who's the Browns' backup quarterback?
A kid from UCLA, Dorian Thompson-Robinson.
Oh, at DTR. Yeah.
Off the bench, he can play some, but he can't play real well. And the third quarterback, Jameis Winston, who probably he's got more credentials than DTR, but he turns the football over. Maybe they're going to have to wind up going to him. But just a disaster. And the Browns are in so much salary cap hell. If they were to release him, if they were to give up on him, cut him, they get a $73 million cap hit each of the next 2 years.
Holy crap.
Which would be an all-time record in the NFL because they kept restructuring his deal.
Well, at some point you got to wash your hands of this, and it's what they say. It's like a sunk cost.
Yeah.
The money's already been spent, so you got to make a call there. Jay Cutler's a punk. He's always been a punk.
Nice common sense.
Yeah, and so come on. I mean, when I saw that headline, I went, okay, it's Jay Cutler doing this sort of thing.
And that's a Vanderbilt guy. That's a smart dude.
Yeah.
You know who he reminds me of? I look at him. I look at the way he conducts his business, the smirk on his face. Trevor Bauer. Smart dude.
Yeah. I can see that.
Why are you in this situation?
Yeah. So that guy, I mean, he's had a checkered past of these kinds of incidents, but he's always been mega talented, and he just never became what we thought. Now, he was in Denver, and then I think Chicago. Those are the only two teams?
I believe so, and he was out of the league.
Yeah.
I think he kind of retired early and was going to go into TV because he was glib. There was an attitude. There was a smirk. And either he didn't like it or they didn't like him, and that was short-circuited pretty quick.
Well, it just seems he's like an unlikable guy from what I've kind of picked up. Although he always has usually a hot girlfriend or a wife or whomever is hanging out with him.
Or both.
Yeah.
Okay, those are topics on the table in the NFL. Do you want to jump in? You tell us in Fans Forum what defines a Hall of Fame coach and which of the names that I just ran through you believe is a real, true Hall of Fame coach. As John said, there are a lot of good names on that board. We go from that. What do you do on Saturday? You sit there and watch upsets in college football.
It was a great weekend.
It's been a great weekend of Saturdays this fall.
Yeah, and I'm so happy for Oregon.
The Ducks are number one in the poll. Can you imagine that? Dylan Gabriel goes crazy, throws for 271 yards, another couple touchdowns. The Ducks keep on winning. Here's the weird part of the conversation with the Ducks. In the last 6 weeks in college football, we have now had 4 different number one teams. Bama, Georgia, Texas, Ohio State, and now Oregon is number one. This is the 5th different number one team in the country since the beginning of the college football season. Texas, there is no quarterback controversy, even though they benched the starter, Quinn Ewers. Texas got smoked by Georgia, 30-15. They sat Ewers down because of turnovers. They went to the kid freshman, Arch Manning. Manning kind of put his finger in the dike, stopped the bleeding. They went back to Ewers at the end of the game. Steve Sarkisian says, Quinn is my starter going forward. Alabama, they are not the same program post-Nick Saban. Alabama just scuffles, struggles, and gets beat. Jalen Milroe is still putting up really good numbers. He was on my Heisman potential list to start the year. He's not there anymore. It doesn't seem to have any help around him. That's a big issue. They got a really good freshman receiver. They got a freshman running back, but it's just not the same driven program as it was under Nick Saban. They're going to need some help, I think, in the offseason. USC, holy cow. They get beat by Maryland. East Coast road trip. They blow the lead. Fourth quarter mismanagement again by Lincoln Riley. They are 3-4. All 4 losses were by a touchdown or less. All 4 losses, they had the lead in the fourth quarter and screwed it up. And here they are in the fourth quarter at Maryland, one of the final possessions of the game, with a chance to win it going down the field, and they're facing a 4th and 1 with no timeouts in their pocket. If you run the ball, you get the fresh set of downs and at least a minute and a half to go on the clock to get it to close field goal range. On 4th and 1, this is USC. Big backs, big linemen, 5-star recruits. Lincoln Riley tries a 57-yard field goal on a 4th and 1.
57 yards?
And it's blocked. And allows Maryland to recover. Maryland goes down the field with their quarterback, Billy Edwards, who threw the hell out of the ball. By the way, the Danton Lynn defense doesn't work at USC, didn't work at UCLA. They go down, and Billy Edwards scores a game-winning touchdown. And Lincoln Riley, clock management. Lincoln Riley, bad decisions, fourth quarter. You know, the week prior, he had all these timeouts in his pocket and didn't use them. And they wound up throwing an interception when, if they had game planned a week ago, they would have won that game too. So Lincoln Riley has taken a lot of heat in USC. How about UCLA? East Coast road trip. Finally won. Snapped a 5-game losing streak. He beat Rutgers. But that's Rutgers. I will say that Ethan Garbers stood in there and he made plays. The quarterback, 383 yards passing, 4 touchdowns. He went 32 for 38 throwing the football. So Bieniemy and his playbook and his coaching seems to start to click with Garbers. Garbers, to me, still takes way too many hits, still turns the ball over. But at Rutgers, he was 32 for 38 for 383. Just fascinating to see what's happened to SC and where UCLA is. Comments?
Well, first of all, the Dylan Gabriel Oregon story is great. It was really interesting seeing the Buckeyes playing in Eugene.
Yeah.
Because if they ever did face off, it was usually in a bowl game or some neutral site. So that was cool. I was rooting for Texas, but Georgia was just a way higher caliber team. And yeah, Arch Manning came in, he ran the ball a bit, but Ewers was clearly, overmatched by that defense. I mean, he couldn't penetrate it. It's nice to see a team like Texas that's not in the Big Ten or the SEC to be number 1, but now they're not number 1 anymore. How far did they fall in the poll?
Good question. Did they go to 5?
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so then I look at these other teams. Alabama, I feel bad for Kalen DeBoer. Maybe Nick Saban kind of saw it coming and took it and left when he saw the pipeline of recruits and who he had. I'm wondering if Kalen DeBoer is realizing that. And then I think about SC and that flight home from the East Coast must have been miserable. Everyone thought Lincoln Riley is this guru, this offensive genius, and yet he's screwing up his play calling and his clock management. I mean, it's going to get to a point here pretty soon where I think SC is going to have a big regret about going to the Big Ten.
Yeah, you can only pull the card out of your shirt pocket that says we lost on the final possession. How many times can you do that? He's lost 4 games, all at the end of games, most all of them because he didn't get the job done from an offensive standpoint when he had the ball. They could have sealed the verdict.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, when the Padres couldn't win in extra innings last year, it was the same kind of thing. You got to play to win the game at the end, and Lincoln Riley's not getting it done.
So if you're a college football fan, how cool is Oregon being number 1? How wild is college football right now? So Oregon becomes the 5th different team in number 1 since the start of the season, and we've had 4 different number 1s in the last 7 weeks. I mean, it's just college football is amazing. Any USC Trojan fan out there? Anybody left? We'll talk about that too. Join us in Fans Forum. We go from football to really an amazing weekend in college basketball.
Yeah, we're getting started here. I'm a huge college basketball fan, more so than the NBA, and I'm excited. I mean, but the landscape's changing.
And they're not happy. They're not happy in Charlottesville, Virginia, and they're not happy up in Spokane, Washington. Let's talk about the quotes from the coaches. This came like a bolt of lightning out of the sky. Tony Bennett retired, resigned, walked away from the University of Virginia. And his farewell press conference was pretty much to the point about what's happened now. Everything has changed. These are the quotes from Tony Bennett's press conference about the state of the game, the changes in the rules and how you get players, the long-term effect, the sport is not healthy, The critique, a.k.a. condemnation of the NCAA for having no oversight and giving no direction about the NIL and the transfer portal. And he just admitted, I'm not all in on basketball anymore because the sport's not healthy. I mean, it was a shocker. His career record, he won 1 NCAA title. He won 6 ACC titles at Virginia. His record's like 363 and 163, and he walked away from the sport. That's defined him. So that was a stunner. Meanwhile, the Pac-12 basketball preseason conference was in Vegas, and Mark Few had a lot to say. The Gonzaga coach, Bulldogs obviously are coming to the Pac-12 2 years from now. He made reference to Tony Bennett. You will see more of this, talking about coaches waking up in the middle of the night and saying, not me. I mean, look at the list. Roy Williams, Jay Wright, and now Tony Bennett. And Mark Few admitting what I signed up to be as a head coach at Gonzaga. It's a much different job than I signed up for. And he says, coaches are waking up to the reality. You either adapt or die. And if you can't adapt, you do what Tony Bennett did, step aside. And he ripped the Pac-12 presidents for allowing the Pac-12 to die, saying they were not open-minded and they are not educated about what modern athletics is all about and how you should react and handle the situations about players' rights. So Mark Few, excited about Gonzaga coming to the Pac-12, and he said at the end of the day, that was strictly a business decision. Get this, Gonzaga leaving the WCC, they're going to get 11 times the media revenue by joining the Pac-12 and continuing to go to NCAA tournaments. 11 times the media revenue they were getting in the West Coast Conference.
Oh, that's an easy decision.
Yeah, he said we had to make it on behalf of the school. But he was upset at what the death of the Pac-12 meant. So that's an interesting story there. So your reaction, Tony Bennett, your reaction to the Gonzaga coach?
Well, I think a lot of these coaches are old school, and they're, especially basketball has such a tradition of like old school mentality coaches. And the world's changed, and these guys, clearly they don't want to be part of this new world, like, with Tony Bennett opting out. But it's just time for a new guy to come in that can work with this NIL transfer portal stuff. And yeah, it is still a little bit of the wild, wild west. In the end, I think this is good. By the way, one of our Aztecs went over there to play in Virginia, Elijah Saunders. It makes me wonder if he feels kind of bait and switch by this. Did he go there because of Tony Bennett?
Yep, concur. That was after I was shocked to read what Bennett had done in the middle of the night on Friday when that happened. That was the first thing I thought of Saturday morning. This kid went to Virginia to play for that coach who had a great rep, and that coach is not there anymore.
Yeah.
Regrets.
Yeah. So it's a serious problem. And good on Mark Few for like calling out the Pac-12 presidents, because they screwed this whole thing up. The Pac-12 could have kept this thing together if they just came to their senses. But that opened the door for Few and Gonzaga, and so we'll see what happens now.
Okay, so we got basketball. You got an opinion on Tony Bennett's comments, got an opinion on Mark Few, Gonzaga, Pac-12. Feel free to join us. Last topic on the table, talking hoops. It's the opening week of the NBA season.
Yeah, the Lakers and the Clippers, and you've been talking about Dalton Connect. Do you think he's going to be good this year?
Boy, great headline. Do they have enough? Now, let's start with the Lakers. We talked about the first-round draft pick out of Tennessee, the big three-point shooting guy, Dalton Connect. He had one game in preseason this past week. It's hard to ignore it. He scored 35 in one preseason game against the Suns. He scored 20 points in a row in that game.
Wow.
Hit 7 threes along the way. If Dalton Connect can do that with some form of consistency for the Lakers, then I think that takes some of the workload offensively off Anthony Davis and LeBron James. The rest of the roster and the guys off the bench is pretty much intact. Connect has to be a contributor and a difference maker every game. He's not going to score 35 points every game. But if he can hit the threes, and that's why they drafted him, then they might have a pretty decent team. If he can't, if he's a rookie who gets overwhelmed, and then everything falls on the shoulders of AD and King James, then you're dealing with the reality, okay, we have two superstars, but how long before they get hurt? Because those guys always get hurt. Bronny James, this is the epitome of stupidity. I'm sorry. Some of my friends in the media that work in L.A., what the hell are you thinking, writing, and covering? So Bronny in his final preseason game scores 17. Everybody, yay! He scored 17. Lakers got beat by 58.
58?
By 58. They lost to the Phoenix Suns. Bronny got 17. And that's what they're writing about. 12th guy on the roster.
What the hell?
Legacy player.
It's a joke.
Goes 17. It's an interesting development, though. They just made a deal yesterday. Lakers signed a free agent guard from Xavier. His name is Quinn Oliveira. He scored 33 points in a game and a half, the final 2 exhibition games for the Lakers.
Hey.
Can stroke it outside. He's more dangerous than Bronny is offensively. Now, I don't think he's going to make the opening night roster. I think he winds up in the G League to start the season. But they saw a lot in scouting him. So Oliveira from Xavier gets signed at the last minute to a G League contract. In terms of the Clippers, their season's over. And their season has not even started as they move into the brand new Intuit Dome that Steve Ballmer financed right across the street from the Great Western Forum, the old Laker home. They're in their own building for the first time ever, and I don't see how they win. There is no Kawhi Leonard. He is now out indefinitely. They're not even going to entertain any comments about timeline and when he can play. Here's the big issue. So he broke down again in the playoffs last April. Didn't play at the end of the playoff season. Lakers got taken out. So he went through all the rehab from the end of April into August when he went to the Olympic training tryouts. Mm-hmm. Made the team. One practice, and he broke down again. Then he went through from August into September into where we are in October, 3 different weight training programs to strengthen the knee, calm down the inflammation. He had another scope, I'm led to believe, for scar tissue. So that's another 2.5 months of medical protocols. He can't practice, and he can't play. I don't think he's ever going to play again. And if you don't have him, and Paul George's mailing address is now Philadelphia, you're opening the season with an aging James Harden and the center Zubac and Amir Coffey, who's going to replace Kawhi Leonard. Amir Coffey last seen sitting on the bench with Tyronn Lue most of the season. The season's over, and the season hasn't even begun. So that's my impression of Lakers basketball. It's hard to say Connect holds the key to the season, but if he can be what he was at Tennessee, hitting threes, I think it changes the whole persona of the Lakers offense. And Clippers basketball, there is no basketball to pay any attention to. And John Riley's response.
It's a sad for the Clippers. You know, it's the curse that's been following this team for decades. So I don't know. I mean, I feel bad for Ballmer, too. Open up that new building, and he's going to have a crap team. As far as the Lakers are concerned, I mean, yeah, the Connect is an interesting storyline. The people will be talking about Bronny and about LeBron and AD. The guy on the roster that I just don't really get is D'Angelo Russell.
Hot and cold personality.
Yeah. So wasn't he like the number 1 overall pick like a few years back? Or
wasn't number 1 overall, but he was in a high number 1s. Came out of Ohio State. He set a Laker record last year for threes. 3 points made. You know, I thought, okay, this guy has had a good statistical season. Lakers kind of fought their way into the playoffs, got to postseason and got benched. He was miserable.
Yeah.
Shooting threes.
Well, he opted in this year, right?
Yeah, pay me my $18 million, and they had to pay him because they signed him.
But I would imagine the Lakers were hoping he was going to opt out.
I think they were hoping a whole bunch of those guys would opt out, and they all opted back in for the payday.
Yeah. Well, I can't blame the players for going for the money, but D'Angelo Russell just always seems to be this quagmire, enigma. Like, he's supposed to be good, but then he's not really good, and why is he starting, and why does he keep getting these big deals? I mean, I just don't get it.
There's an attitude there that doesn't live up to his standard on the court.
Yeah,
it's
just not working. But, I will say this. If you're hoping that Dalton Connect is going to have a really good season, he's got the perfect head coach, J.J. Redick. I mean, he was the 3-point, assassin from outside. Maybe he can work on Connect and turn him into himself.
Well, they gave him the playbook. Guys who can shoot a lot of threes. What'd they do during preseason? I think they finished up 24% from the 3-point line.
No, that's not getting it done.
No, not right now.
No.
Well, they open on Tuesday night. There are no more preseason games. They play Minnesota Timberwolves on Tuesday to start the season. So only time will tell whether Connect be the guy, but he may hold the season in his hands if he can hit threes on a game-in, game-out basis because they need more consistent offense. They've not had that. Hey, this podcast is brought to you by Dixie Line Lumber and Home Centers. 9 locations to serve you in San Diego and the new one that's opened up in Dana Point in Orange County. You got projects, they've got materials. You want ideas, they can help you. Dixie Line Lumber. We are ready for Fans Forum, and you can join us, but just be jumping into the chat box right there on live stream. You got a question, you got an answer, you got a statement to make. You don't like the way I'm dressed, you condemn what he's wearing. That's okay. Jump on board, be the fashion critic, though we'd rather talk sports with you. But, John, your turn, your best friends, Fans Forum.
Okay, let's go to Greg here, and Greg says, Lee and John, as a smaller market fan in Seattle, it is discouraging to see the 2 highest payrolls in the World Series. I find myself rooting for the Mets and Cleveland World Series. How do smaller markets compete?
It's hard. You got to, you need a stroke of good luck. You need a good farm system to make it work. Can it happen? Sure, it's happened in the past. I mean, look, Arizona was in the World Series a year ago today. Seattle. What would they be like if they had kept Teoscar Hernandez instead of having him wear Dodger blue? Maybe that would have been the difference maker. I mean, Seattle, I'm not going to say they wasted a year of great pitching. I think they had the #1 overall ERA of starting pitchers in baseball.
Yeah.
And yet it was a scuffle for them to try to get and stay in the playoff race, and eventually they did not. You need to be able to draft. You need to be able to sign internationals. You need a little lady luck that your guys are not going to break down. The Mariners could not hit a lick up until the end of the season, and by then it was just kind of late. They lost the whole thing. They were up by 10 games over Houston, and then Houston wound up winning the division, and then Houston got taken out. So Seattle's close. Maybe it's just a growth thing. Maybe they just got to keep the Julio Rodriguez's and some of those other guys healthy along the way. I mean, no doubt they got really, really good young pitching.
Having a big budget obviously helps, but it's certainly no guarantee. Although this year, all the big money teams made the playoffs. Yep. It's funny. Seattle is such an interesting sports town because I don't think they've ever won a big championship, have they?
No.
Not in football, not in baseball, not with the Supersonics back in the day. So, and then the Kraken, I mean, they've been competitive, but they haven't won the NHL.
No, but they've only been in operation, 3 years?
3 years. So yeah. Seattle, it used to be Cleveland was the most, depressed sports market. Seattle and San Diego might be the 2 running for it.
Well, Seattle's got University of Washington, and they've had really good football in different chunks of time. I think the Pacific Northwest, notably Seattle and the state of Washington, is just a great sports venue.
Well, you were the play-by-play man for the Seahawks. I mean, tell me about your experience doing that, John.
It was great. I went there after the Chargers left our station, and I wound up going to Seattle doing the Seahawks for 3 years and had a great time. And they were just in the process of transitioning from bad franchise with new ownership led by Paul Allen, who had bought the franchise. Ken Behring, I think, was the owner who tried to move it to Los Angeles. They were moving out of their offices, and there was a court order. You can't move to L.A., and they wound up staying, and Behring got rid of the franchise. Paul Allen bought it, and they had Dennis Erickson as head coach my first year, and then Mike Holmgren, who eventually got him to a Super Bowl. It's a great area. Between Seahawk fan at the old Kingdome and Washington fan at Husky Stadium, which is just a beautiful venue. And Mariner baseball, that 1 year they won 116 games with Ichiro. And they got knocked out of the playoffs after a 116-win season. Think about that. Was
that the year that they knocked out the Yankees in the first round?
Could be.
But that was when they had Griffey and Johnson and
Jay Buhner, and I mean, that was a real collection of players.
Yeah, it really. And A-Rod was on that team too. But when you were broadcasting the Seahawks, were you in the Kingdome?
Oh yeah, strangest place.
It is a weird place.
I mean, it was like a big airport hangar. And the noise would ricochet off the cement walls. So there wasn't any sounding boards in there. It was a tough place to play. When the Seahawks were good in the Chuck Knox era, damn, that was a tough place to play.
I saw a Seattle Mariners game there against the Red Sox, and it was weird. It was echoing. It was like maybe only a third full, and it was the old-fashioned artificial turf that's like, 1/8 of an inch on top of a concrete pad.
Yep.
I wasn't feeling it, but I'm happy that Seattle has 2 new stadiums.
Yeah, well, the baseball stadium's cool. Obviously, the new field, which was built on the site of the old Kingdome, that's a cool venue. And I'll tell you, that thing is the seats. What's it called now? Lumen Stadium, Lumen Field.
I think so.
The corporate sponsor. The seats go up. I mean, you are right on top of the field, and there's cantilevered. It's not an enclosed; it's a roof, and that sound stays in that stadium. It does not go up and out.
Well, that's kind of like the Husky Stadium is built that way too, isn't it?
Yeah, but Husky's a little bit more open now.
Okay.
But great venues. I think the Pacific Northwest, Seattle, state of Washington is just great sports town. Next one.
Okay, let's go to Johnny. He says, hey, how about that Dodger pitching staff?
Boy, I'm getting banged. You know, I did the commentary, and I wrote a huge column, about a month and a half ago about the Dodger way doesn't work, talking about the pitching crisis, the epicenter of all the injuries. And at that point, the Dodgers were staggering, and all their pitchers were having surgery. And, and then the L.A. Times, a week and a half after I wrote my column, they did this big investigative report, really put together well, about all the pitching injuries and the mishandling of the pitchers and what they demand of the pitchers. And I said the Dodger way no longer works. Now everybody, in the last 2.5 weeks, the whole world is piling on me for my column about Dodger way doesn't work. Well, they still have pitching problems. I mean, I can't imagine being in the World Series and having to have probably 2 bullpen days in a 7-game series. At the end of the day, the Dodgers, I'm not saying they're living on borrowed time because they've earned this trip to the World Series against the Yankees because of their bats and the grittiness of their bullpen, but they still got monster pitching problems that need to be addressed in the offseason. But the world is just piling on me for my column and my commentary here about the Dodger way.
Well, you were accurate in what you were saying at that time.
With all the injuries, all the surgeries.
Yeah, and then suddenly the Dodgers pitching just flipped and became like all aces. And you're like, what happened, to this whole situation? So Dodger fan, I think, acknowledged and said, essentially you were right that the whole system was breaking down. But now that the Dodgers are winning, they're like, I told you so. Hacksaw, you don't know what you're talking about now. So it's just like, they kind of, whenever the script flips, they just kind of move from bandwagon A to bandwagon B.
Hey, and the bandwagoners either didn't approve that I was wearing a Dodger hoodie. I know Padre fan didn't approve, but it's in the closet. It's clean. I'm going to put it on.
It's funny. You get more comments almost about what you were wearing, than you were about the sports commentary.
We move on.
Okay, let's go down here to on the list.
John's got all these starred. We have a column on the right-hand side of our screen where John kind of previews them and puts stars. We've got so many stars here. We're going to be here till Wednesday.
A long time. Yeah, this is from Callan. Howdy, gents. Who do you got winning the Larry O'Brien this season?
Well, if Boston stays healthy, Boston returns all this firepower. Now, granted, there's a little bit more age on that Boston roster right now, but the Celtics, to me, just look tremendous. I'll be intrigued to see what the Knickerbockers become, by virtue of that last-second trade they made, where they got Julius Randle out the door, and they got Karl Anthony Towns. How does he fit? Knickerbockers have a bit of a problem, I think, in the pivot, but I think the Knickerbockers are worth looking at. Dallas is Dallas, but I'd be really concerned about what appears to be an ongoing calf problem with Luka Doncic. He had calf problems at the end of last season, and he missed most of this preseason with calf issues, and now we're about to embark on an 80-game schedule. Is he going to hold up there? So NBA, I think it's a little bit wide open. Injuries are surely making things different in the NBA if you lose one of your stars. Going to be unique to see what Golden State's going to be like post-Klay Thompson. Thompson, of course, is now in Dallas and seems to have found the fountain of youth. Is it too much on Curry, or does Steve Kerr found enough young guys to put around Steph Curry and Draymond Green? Is this the last hurrah for those guys? So it's going to be, I like watching the NBA, but it's a long slog of a season.
Well, the West is still more loaded than the East, right? Yeah.
So you got Milwaukee. I mean, with Giannis, you got to pay respect to them, but they got age and they got injury, and Chris Middleton's not going to play to start the season again. He's hurt. So
yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of teams in the East that we haven't heard much about in a long time. By the way, Larry O'Brien, wasn't he like the commissioner?
Yes.
Like that was before
David Stern. Larry was there a long time when it became big business. Okay. And then David Stern took it to the next global level.
Well, Stern took over in the 80s?
Yeah.
Okay, so when Magic and Bird came on the scene, was Larry O'Brien still a commissioner then? Or maybe it was Stern then?
Might have been Stern.
Yeah.
But, Larry O'Brien managed it through when it was small and it became big business. And then David Stern that coincided with Yao Ming and all the great players came from abroad. Then it became global business. David Stern did a maximus job making the NBA a global financial entity.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he's a remarkable man. Yeah. Let's keep moving. Let's go to Raul. Lee and John, what off-season moves do you see the Padres making?
Well, they got 7 guys that are due pay raises, Raul. And I talked about this on TV. I do Saturday sports at 6:30 in the morning. You need to get your ass out of bed early. If I'm up there at the station at 5:30 to be on at 6:30, you should at least watch. But I did a huge thing about the Padre payroll. I'll just give you a thumbnail sketch. Padre payroll right now is at 169. They got 7 guys that have to be taken care of. That includes pay raises for Dylan Cease and Michael King. It obviously includes what they're going to give Luis Ariz, who they got from Miami. And a lot of people don't know or forgot, Miami paid his whole salary this year. So the Padres are now on the hook of everything for Luis Ariz. So the big issue is, and they got to take care of the kid. Jackson Merrill's not going to play on a second-year rookie contract. He's going to get a pay bump from $800,000, which was the rookie minimum, to probably $6 to $8 million. So every one of these guys is arbitration eligible. Tanner Scott is a free agent, which means that's going to have a high price tag. You got to re-sign Profar. If they pay each of the 7 what's projected to be their earned income, Padre payroll will go from 169 to 234. That's not going to fly. Owners are not going to go back above the 200 mark. So that means somebody's leaving. Here's the argument. If you were the general manager, you got Luis Ariz, single sitter, player without a position, doesn't run the bases real well, single sitter, virtually no power. You're going to pay him $14.8. That's what he's due. And again, they paid 0 last year because Miami picked up the contract. You got Cease, no hitter, cornerstone, ace of the staff to a degree. But he's represented by
Scott Boras.
Price tag on him is probably going to go from 8 to maybe 14.
Wow.
You got Michael King, 2.5 last year. He's become Greg Maddux. That's probably a pay hike to maybe 8, maybe 10 mil.
Sounds about right.
What do you do at Profar? Represented by
Boras.
1.5 mil, utility guy, career season, but any other season, I was a 240 hitter. What are you going to pay him? Probably going to ask for 8. The kid, Jackson Merrill. What are you going to pay him?
Yeah.
$800,000 to 6. That sounds reasonable. $800,000 to 8. How long before Scott Boras represents him? So, what I'm saying is the Padres have got, I counted 7 guys that they got to take care of financially. And, of course, there was no Joe Musgrove. There'll be some guys leaving. Martin Perez, maybe. But how are they going to go get other players? And do you keep everybody, and at what price, and how high is the payroll going to go? Lost in the conversation is the fan. They've raised the ticket prices 50% over 4 years, including next season's cost. That's an awful lot of money for John Q. Public to go see their team. So I don't know what they can do from the outside unless they're going to trade somebody to make a deal happen. You got the Hassan Kim situation, and he's represented by Boras. So, it's a lot of stuff. They got tough decisions in November, December as it relates to who stays and who goes.
Last time we did talk about Luis Ariz, and I was like, yeah, you got to keep him, maybe make him your number 2 hitter. But I've been thinking about it more, and I'm wondering,
maybe there's a reason he's been traded.
Exactly. Maybe there has been a reason. How often do you trade a guy that won the batting title? And it's happened twice. Yep. So that might be something the Padres can make a move on, but they got to save more than $14 million. But is there any scenario where, Bogarts could be dealt? I don't think so. They'd have to eat that whole contract.
No, none of those guys are tradable because of the length of the contract and their age and how long out that contract runs. Darvish is under contract, I think, to 40 years of age. Bogarts is under contract to 42 years of age. Nobody's going to trade for that contract unless the Padres is going to pay money. If an Eric Hosmer deal comes, you take them. We'll pay a piece of the contract. They're still on the hook for more Eric Hosmer money next year.
Well, there's only 1 year left of that, right?
Yeah, but it's 12 to 13 million every year.
It's still a lot. I agree with you. Now, the Padres have raised the prices, but they're having no trouble selling those tickets.
Right now, but if they start to lose, if it's no longer a pennant race team because we're stuck with all these old age contracts and the farm system isn't ready to bear the next wave, I don't know. It's still a really good franchise. I ache. I think Padre baseball right now, I just ache that they didn't get to the World Series because I thought they had this year to do it or next year. Because after that, there's going to be a dive off, and you're going to be stuck with aging players on long-term contracts, so you can't move.
So now you agree with Smoltz, right?
I never used the word choker. That's distasteful to me. But they
choked.
they got beat. I mean, that roster making that amount of money, those stars, 38 come from behind wins this year, all the walk-off wins. To be shut out 24 innings in a row? I can't imagine that.
It's still mind-blowing to think about it. But imagine if the Padres did beat the Dodgers, they would have rolled the Mets.
Sure.
And
we'd be talking about Padre Yankee baseball nonstop.
And the Padres would have had a very good chance of beating the Yankees. But I don't know what they're going to do here. I mean, but yeah, the numbers aren't adding up.
Okay, next one.
Okay, let's go here to Roy. He says, Lee, in a previous episode, I mentioned the Dodger pitching was in shambles, but our lineup was World Series worthy. That's how we made it to the World Series. We had the best record in MLB. Just saying.
No, you're true. And the bats really rallied. And it's more than just the top of the batting order. It's more than Showtime and Mookie and a healthy Fred Freeman, Max Muncy. Look at what Tommy Edman has done. You talk about, he just won the NLCS MVP. All these game-winning hits and home runs, and he's such a multi-position guy. He can bail you out when you have other injuries. I mean, it's pretty impressive what the Dodger bats have done. But we're in a best-of-7-game series, and that's Aaron Judge, and that's Soto, and that's Stanton, and that's all the other complementary pieces they have, led by that shortstop, and led by the extra outfielder, and led by the second baseman. And the Yankees have got Garrett Cole, and they have decent front-end pitching. I don't like the Yankee bullpen at all. I'm not sure it's real trustworthy, but I think it's going to be a great World Series. But this Dodger team, it's pretty doggone complete.
Well, we were talking about how the bottom of that order was just a disgrace, but all of a sudden they're figuring it out. Now, by the way, I want to just say this for the record. One thing I love about the hacksaw shtick is how you will shorten people's first names. So you're like, you said Fred Freeman, where like the whole world says Freddie Freeman. You say Fred, which I think is fantastic. And you do that with the guys that have short names. You like to lengthen them as well, just to mess with people.
From left field, John Riley with his opinions as co-host. Next topic.
Okay, let's go to Manuel. He says, show me your lightning bolt tonight.
Yeah, good game. I mean, Justin Herbert lit it up last week. Boy, I'd take some heat for what I wrote on my website. I raised the question. So the Chargers and Harbaugh and his tent revival speeches, they're 3-3. Charger fan, who the hell did you beat?
They're 3-2.
3-2. Who did you beat? You beat the Raiders. Look at where the Raiders are. You beat Carolina. Thank God there's no relegation in the NFL. They'd be out of the league. And then the third one they beat was... Who's the third one?
The Raiders.
No, I said Raiders.
Raiders, Panthers, and Broncos.
Broncos in the midst of picking up the pieces, trying to fix.
Mm-hmm.
That's who you beat. You haven't played anybody yet. And the ones you played, you got punched in the mouth. So there's a lot of football still to be played. I'm a big Justin Herbert fan, but now they're so dinged up, they'll be asking for volunteers. Manuel, can you play wide receiver? You run a few routes for us tonight against Arizona? They are really hurt at wide receiver, and now they're down to one running back in J.K. Dobbins. So it's going to be an interesting game. And Arizona plays differently at home in Glendale than they do when they're on the road right now. So I use the word ambush in Arizona. That might happen.
Well, figure there's 2 NFL games tonight. You got to believe that
the world's going to watch Baltimore-Tampa Bay.
Exactly. They're all going to watch the other game. I mean, because East Coast fans don't care about the Cardinals and barely care about the Chargers. So, yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of curious to see who some of these practice squad guys are going to be on the field. Maybe one of them has a night, and they can celebrate that. But Herbert doesn't know when to throw the ball to.
Yeah, that's a big, big issue. But thank you for the show me your lightning bolt phrase.
Okay, let's keep going. We'll go to Michael. Lee, how do the recent college football firings affect the landscape, which also includes the NIL will be used?
Well, I mean, you got a few firings. You're talking about college football. Okay. I mean, the guy at East Carolina, Mike Houston, just got fired Saturday night. There have been a few, but I mean, there'll probably be some more. I think the biggest issue as it relates to the NIL is not everybody is operating by the same set of standards and circumstances. I mean, Texas and the Alabamas and those guys, their NIL checkbook is a hell of a lot bigger than the bottom feeders in the Big Ten and what's left out here of what was the Pac-12. So there's just a massive disparity, and the NCAA is trying really hard to get control of the NIL so they could actually have a blueprint that everybody must operate under. This thing, the way it's structured now, is my quarterback at Penn State can ask for a large amount of money because my quarterback at Penn State's a star. But not everybody can pay their quarterback that kind of money. It's a big, big issue. You call it Wild West. I call it chaos.
It's obviously wild what's happening with it, but let's just pretend for a minute that the SEC and the Big Ten, like we were talking about last time, they work out this super conference thing. Do you think programs like San Diego State or Oregon State, would they just die on the vine?
No, they'd seek to operate at a much different level. You have to be who you are. You can't be what you want to be.
But do you think it would ever become like a legitimate two-tiered system? Like, because right now,
nobody's going that there. Big Ten and SEC talked about that, and they said, no, we're not doing that.
But they're going to probably do that, don't you think?
You never know.
Because right now they say it's a one system, but a one-tiered system, but it's not. You know, the way they select teams for the bowl games and the college playoff, it's a rigged system. So I wonder if they should just call a spade and just, like what Brian Dutcher says, take the football things, let them go on their own, and then leave the rest of us to regional sports.
Could well be, but there'll be a lot less money for, quote, the regional conferences that are left behind because they took our top football program and took our top college football program as part of a super conference. I just, how does everybody else's intercollegiate program financially function if football is gone to a super conference? I don't understand where the revenue is going to come to fund 21 different sports at Stanford University.
Well, it seems like they either have to go to a revenue share model like the NFL or just accept reality and have a two-tiered system.
Well, I think there'll be a race to see if the NCAA can change the landscape. And if they get that changed where they have antitrust exemption and they can then put in place an NIL that is the same for everybody in Division I, this is the pot you have to operate. It's not going to be beyond that. You're not going to have the big cigar booster writing checks to the quarterback and checks to the wide receiver. Everybody will have a pot, and that's the amount. It's up to you to just decide how much you're paying Stanford's quarterback and Stanford's top wide receiver. But everybody will have the same dollar amount to operate. If the NCAA gets the exemption within this calendar year and then can put together a package to control the transfer portal and the NIL, then I think you're bringing some stability to what right now is a volatile, very unstable situation.
Could the NFL ever create an equivalent of the G League?
Well, they got it right now. It's called Big Ten football, SEC football, Big 12 football, etc.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. I wonder if you need to disconnect the sport from the colleges for some of these cases. Because some of these kids, they come out, they just want to get paid right away. And then why not just go right into the pros?
Yeah. No, there's not going to be a minor league that the NFL runs. That's not going to work.
Well, if they can outsource it to the NCAA, that's good for the NFL owners.
John, you're reaching too far. You're going to separate your shoulder. Next topic.
Okay, here we go. Let's talk Richard. Fans Forum. Have the Dodgers invented a new way in using the bullpen as a weapon moving forward? Is this the year Fire Roberts finally goes away? Dodger Boo looks good on you, Lee.
They look good. The Dodgers look good. And I credit their analytic people because they came up with a formula. It started in the Padres series, which was that 8-pitcher shutout bullpen game. And their metric people sat down and devised a structure of the bullpen. I barked last week that they used their closer in the 4th inning. And I said, how the hell are you doing that? And the closer started yesterday. Now, he was a little wild in the beginning, Kopech. But the Dodgers, and again, you can have in theory how we're going to match Kopech in the 4th inning against the right-handed part of the lineup. Mm-hmm. And in the 5th inning, we'll go to Vizia, the left-hander, because you're bringing up Cronenworth and all your left-handed bats. And then the 6th inning will go back to a right-hander so he can face the top of that order. That works in theory, but what if your closer struggles in the 1 inning he has and he gets lit? And then you have to change everything. Then maybe that whole bullpen idea falls apart. So they've had 3 bullpen days with the Dodgers in the postseason. 2 of them worked, 1 blew up in their face. So it's all dependent on what do your closers do. But the theory was right that I'm going to bring my right-handers in to meet the Padre right-handers, and they blew them away. And then when Cronenworth and all those other guys came up batting left-handed, here came Vizia, and he blew them away. And then the right-hander and then Banda, the left-hander, came back in. So that one opportunity, that one time, the analytics guys said, this is how we're mixing and matching, and it choked off the Padres.
Well, you figure if they obviously line it up the way they would hope it would go, and if something goes sideways, they have to adjust on the fly. But this reminds me about in the NFL, some of the teams, was it Bill Walsh that would script like the first 15 plays?
Everybody does.
Yeah, so to me that's interesting, but you can't stick to that if it's not working.
Well, down and distance changes the game situation.
Exactly.
You're not going to run certain things when you're at your own 5-yard line versus if you get the ball out of the 48.
Yeah, but with the Dodgers, they're creative with the bullpen, but it's not like the Yankees have 5 or 4 starters that are going to blow you away. You get beyond Cole and Rondon, and what's left?
Luis Gil. He won 16 games.
16?
Yeah, he was a real surprise.
Oh, I wasn't paying attention to him.
Yeah, after that, well, you're out there chirping about the Oakland A's and the freaking Giants all the time, John. You don't have time to pay the rest attention to the rest of the league. But their 4th starter is iffy. I think their bullpen is stretched. I just don't know that they've got legitimacy at closer. The 4th kid in the rotation just came off the disabled list, Clark Schmidt. Was a pretty good pitcher, but he hasn't pitched back to what he did last year because he had health issues. But now he's back in the rotation. So bullpen days are great. The Dodgers have the depth in the bullpen. I mean, they've got 3 established guys that were closers at different fragments of their career. And that's a pretty good collection of 3 right-handers and 2 left-handers that can throw the hell out of the ball right now. So the Dodgers bullpen by committee or bullpen days seems to be better set than what the Yankees have.
And then the Yankees have Tim Hill, who's actually doing pretty well.
That's right.
One question, though, about the Yankees. Soto had that monster home run in the 10th inning to win it for the Yankees. A lot of Padre fans are saying, why is he suddenly good with the Yankees? He was dogging it with us with the Padres.
Well,
do you buy that?
I don't know that I would say dogging it because he did hit well here and he hit home runs, but he is surrounded by a better batting order. A lot more dangerous guys in the Yankee batting order than the San Diego batting order. Because Soto's last year here, there was hardly any input from Tatis, and you had Machado, who was hot and cold, and Hassan Kim had a good year a year ago, but it's not the same team.
Yeah, Cronenworth had a down year.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there's more big bats, scary bats at Yankee Stadium for Soto to be in that mix. They're good, and the wild card for the Yankees is Stanton. I mean, that once upon a time, Giancarlo Stanton, used to be known as Mike Stanton, he was phenomenal in Miami. I thought this was the next Dave Winfield. And he got the Yankee Stadium on the mega contract. He got hurt, and he just never stayed healthy. Now, he's come off the disabled list this year, and boy, his back third of the season and his postseason, that dude is dangerous. He's hitting home runs. I think he hit 4 home runs last week.
Yeah.
And Judge hit 3, and I think Soto hit 3 or 4 last week.
Isn't Stanton, when his batting stance is a little
weird.
odd,
Yeah.
he just looks like a statue up there, and it looks like he's about to crack or break, and then suddenly, huge boom, and the ball's like a missile. So, yeah.
Good series is coming. Can't wait for Friday night. Next question.
Okay, let's go to John. He goes, if the city of Oakland were smart, they'd offer the Rays a temporary home at the Coliseum. Could you imagine the A's having to return to the city they abandoned? As for the series, watch for Juan Soto to launch some home run shots to compete with SpaceX. I don't care for either team but Yankees in 5.
Now, I think the sucker's going 7 because you're discounting the Dodger batting order, which is pretty doggone good. The only thing about Tampa and Oakland, I mean, the Coliseum's a rat hole. Secondly, Tampa, they've got to be concerned about their TV contracts. They wouldn't be a Tampa-based fan support team if they went to Oakland for 3 years. So I don't. That's nice in theory, but it's far-fetched. It wouldn't work. And even for them to go to Orlando to play, and that's one of the biggest minor league stadiums anywhere, to play in Orlando at Disneyland's stadium. It's a spring training stadium. Doesn't make any sense because Tampa to Orlando is a long ways away on the map. You're going to, what's your fan support going to be like? Because you're not really Tampa's team if you're going to Orlando for 1 season or 3 seasons.
But that's only like a few hours away, isn't it?
Well, it's more than a few. And Orlando's up on the northeast coast. Tampa's down here in southern Florida.
Orlando's like in the center of the state. It's not on the coast.
Well, it's closer to the east coast than it is the west side.
Yeah, I always think of Orlando as sort of like right in the middle between Tampa and Cape Canaveral.
Okay.
Yeah, but maybe it's kind of like the Oakland A's. You were saying how they couldn't move to Nevada because they lose their TV contract deal in Northern California. So maybe that's what, like you said, why the race.
I don't think baseball would approve it. They got a real problem, and now it's St. Petersburg on the weekend saying, I don't think we can spend this money. We got to rebuild because of the hurricanes, rebuild a water system. We're going to put a roof on a baseball stadium that's going to be torn down in 3 years.
Just put some tarps over it. It'll be fine. Go to Home Depot.
No,
go to Dixie Line.
And they can't play open. I said, well, just take the buttresses off, take the roof off, play open air. But they can't because there's no drainage system in that stadium.
Oh, so every time it rains.
It rains. In Tampa, it does rain.
Oh, God. Okay. Let's keep moving.
Thanks, Sean.
Okay, let's go here to Ron. I hate the Dodgers since 1957. I was born in Brooklyn in 1947. Was broken-hearted little boy when Dodgers moved. I'm an Arizona Diamondbacks fan now.
I was born in Flatbush. I was born in Brooklyn. I grew up on Long Island, but I was born in Brooklyn. I still have, in 1957, at the end of the season, when the Dodgers moved, I was a young kid. My dad used to get the tabloids, the New York Daily Mirror, the New York Daily News, the New York Post. He'd bring them home. He'd ride home on the train. And I remember there was a front page. This is when they used artwork, not pictures, cartoons and artwork on the front page of one of the tabloids. There was a picture of the Dodger, the bum. What do you call it? Not logo, but the Dodger symbol was a bum, unshaven, shabby clothes with a suitcase. And they had a picture. I'll have to see if I can find it in my scrapbooks. But they have a picture of Dem Bum, the Dodger mascot, boarding a train with a suitcase with a pennant that read the word Brooklyn with a ticket in his hand to Los Angeles. That was the front page of one of the New York tabloids the day the Dodgers announced they were moving.
Well, that had to be gigantic news.
Oh, huge.
In New York.
And the Giants moved simultaneously from the Polo Grounds to San Francisco.
Yeah, I mean, baseball fans in New York must have been devastated. But go back to the Bums. Isn't that a nickname for the Dodger fans, or was it a nickname for the Dodger players?
Both.
Both.
They were called Dem Bums.
Dem Bums. And I know the whole Dodger thing is about dodging trolley cars.
Way back in the day.
Way back in the day, yeah.
So, and they had a band. They used to march around Ebbets Field, like a 5 or 7 member band, play music.
Like a tuba and all that?
Yeah, they called it the Symphonies. I mean, it was really cool. If you go back, that's what you should do in your spare time. Just Google Brooklyn Dodgers cartoons or something come up. And I bet you could probably find the one with Dem Bum, the mascot, with a suitcase, weeping, had tears as he was boarding the train with a ticket in his hand that said Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. That was a long time ago, and it flashed back in my mind when he said 1957.
Those were like memes, but for the 1950s.
Yeah, different version.
Yeah. Okay, let's go here. 4R XLA. Should the Raiders trade Max Crosby for draft picks so Telesco can start another rebuild? Max would make a great Lion.
They've said no. That question came up towards the end of this past week after the trade of Devontae Adams. But, they're going to have multiple picks now, so therefore they have an opportunity to probably get the quarterback, and they need a quarterback. That's where you start your rebuild. They also need some health, and that becomes an issue too. But Telesco's got his hands full, and, the burning question, that's not his coach. He inherited that coach. Is that the right guy? And then the third question, XLA, has to be Tom Brady's influence on Mark Davis. Will Brady carry some clout in terms of decision-making? I bet he does. That's going to be fascinating to see. But, boy, they right now, they just don't have enough players, and the players they have can't play, including the quarterbacks. One who's now gone with a broken thumb, and the other one that throws interceptions.
What a mess. What is this, a disaster? And Tom Telesco signed up for the wrong job.
Wow. He had to be back in it. But if they give him carte blanche, he's a smart guy. Brady's a smart guy. Maybe they'll have a meeting of the minds and find a blueprint that works, that they can fix this thing, because everything those guys have done there, going back to the Gruden days, none of it's worked.
I saw a picture today of Tom Brady with a Mark Davis haircut. It was great. Okay, let's keep moving. Let's go to Bob. Orlando makes sense, and I expect they can add more seats. Temporary stadia can be built overnight. Do it and make it 15,000 or more.
Yeah, anything is possible. It's an open-air stadium, Bob. That's a good point. It's obviously a good baseball market. I mean, all the spring training markets in Florida are really special places to visit, but they're all encompassed by really small stadiums. Like I said, Port Charlotte, which is where the Rays have spring training, is well attended, but that's like a 5,800 to 6,000 stadium. You can't have that in Major League Baseball, and the unions carries clout because they get a vote as to whether we allow this to happen.
Yeah, I think he's right. They can build temporary seats. They can get creative with this. I mean, are they going to build temporary seats for the A's in Sacramento? They must, right?
Yeah, they're taking that I want to say that was 8,000. I think they're going to take it to 12.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, hey, thank you for the input, Robert.
Okay, let's go to Emmanuel. He says, great day for L.A. yesterday. Dodgers won the pennant. The Rams beat the Raiders. Hopefully the Chargers win tonight.
We'll find out. That was a huge game for the Rams. I mean, they were 1-4, and their kids brought it on defense. I mean, I'd not seen that young guys play that way, and they're starting to get some of their injured secondary guys back, and they think they're going to get some of their offensive linemen back in the next couple of weeks. But Stafford's just taken some wicked hits, and he's getting up off the turf, but boy, he's getting blasted on some of the plays. And they think now the Rams play this Thursday night. They think Cooper Kupp is going to be activated because he went through a lot of full practice pass routes at max speed and didn't have problems with the ankle. So they'll get another week of practice in. So I think Kupp plays on Thursday, which is huge. But there isn't, Puka Nacua is not active yet. Tyler Higbee is not back yet. So they got to get these injured guys back. Maybe they'll be competitive the second half of the season. The TV network guys are saying they're going to make the playoffs. Well, I don't know it. At 2-4, I don't know. If they got a long hill to run up.
How many years does Stafford have left?
I think he's got 2 left on the contract.
Okay.
He's a warrior. Holy cow. I mean, he's a tough hombre, and he stays in there. He took some shots yesterday in the second half. I didn't think he was going to get up, and he did. And Kyron Williams, the Notre Dame running backs, he's a tough guy running the ball too. So, but their kids really stepped up to play against the Raiders. There's a reason that that quarterback had 4 turnovers. I mean, he was just a gunslinger. Minshew was just beyond himself in terms of where the hell you're throwing the ball, why you're throwing the ball, can't hold the ball, you're getting hit, you're dropping it. Wow.
Do you think the Raiders are tanking on purpose?
They should.
Yeah.
Shedeur Sanders, baby.
Yeah, there you go.
Why not?
Why not?
So, yeah, I think they're going to wind up. But, Carolina's in that mix. Carolina's got just a miserable football team. So, Raiders are going to have some competition for the number 1 pick.
All right. Here we go. Let's keep moving. We'll go to Derek. Hacksaw got a haircut. Nice.
And the bowl of soup I got was really good, too.
Okay, let's keep moving. We'll go to Javi. World Series, here we come. Yankees aren't playing the Guardians this time around. Good luck.
Yeah, I'd say in the playoffs, if people come up to me, I do all this routine at a fitness center every morning, the 6 a.m. hour, and guys come up and talk sports with me all the time. And how do you think this team's going to do in the postseason? I say, well, postseason is a much different venue. It's really different. It's electric. It's tough. It's the focus, the intensity. And by the way, you're not playing the Pirates or the White Sox or the Marlins in the postseason, so you better have your guns loaded. You better be able to cope with it. So, yeah, I think Yankee-Dodger World Series is good. The mega TV ratings, I can't imagine what the ratings are going to be like in Japan. They just had, for that final Dodger-Padre game, we talked about this last Thursday, final Dodger-Padre game when it was Ohtani, Yu Darvish, and Yamamoto, had an all-time record 12.8 million viewers. Biggest TV audience for anything in the history of television in Japan. So now you got Ohtani and Yamamoto, and you got Aaron Judge. So I think the TV ratings are going to be great here, and they're going to be phenomenal over there.
Yeah, and the Yankees have a history of having Japanese players as well.
Oh, sure.
So there's going to be a lot of Japanese fans that'll be rooting for the Yankees too. From a media perspective, a national perspective, a baseball perspective, this is a great World Series. But as a Padre fan, I'm still kind of jaded, but I'm going to try to appreciate it for what it is, and let's see what happens.
Do you think, if knowing what happened last Thursday on this podcast, when host showed up wearing a Dodger hoodie, do you think there would be a meltdown if host showed up wearing a Yankee hoodie?
That's a great question. You should try it. Bring it on. Dig it out of your closet.
It's in there.
Yeah, I've seen it before. You've worn it a few times over here. Let's go here to Jason. NFL showed they don't know what a Hall of Fame coach is by making the pioneer, Don Coryell, wait until years after his death to let him in.
Yeah, the limitation on how many could be admitted is a bit of an issue. And then you get into the conversation. I happen to think Schottenheimer, with 200 career wins, deserves accolades and deserves membership. But also in the equation is, what did they do in the playoffs? Have they won Super Bowls? Now suddenly you got different layers that qualify these guys as to whether the right guy should be voted in, or they wind up having to wait another year, or wait 5 years, or wait 18 years. In the case of Coryell's was different because he was such a creative genius and an innovator offensively. A lot of people don't know about Clark Shaughnessy. Look that up tonight. Put your beer down and just Google in his name and see what he did. Mm-hmm. He's the one that discovered the T formation. He's the one that came up with the single wing. He's the one that eventually created what would become our pro set passing attack. And he was a great college coach and a great NFL coach. That was way back in the 30s, 40s, into the 50s. But Clark Shaughnessy deserves. Now, to me, he should be in the contributor class, not the coaching class, because he contributed in terms of creative genius.
I'm thinking of all the NFL coaches today. Who would be in the Hall of Fame? I mean, Andy Reid, obviously, but who else? Boy. Maybe Tomlin?
Well, if he continues to win and continues to get back to the Super Bowl, I guess possibly. Mm-hmm. I don't know. That's so far down the road.
It is. And there's so many young coaches. So
there's so much turnover on the coaching ranks.
Yeah, exactly.
There's nobody that's serving the length of time that Tomlin or Cowher or Chuck Noll did. I mean, we're talking about veteran coaches that coached a long time. When you're talking Mike Shanahan, you're talking Dan Reeves, and multiple successes at multiple teams.
Yeah, Coryell got screwed, though.
Well, it just took forever because it was a creative aspect. It was not, Don Coryell, did he win 100 games in the NFL? No, I'm not sure he did. Maybe he was close. He never got anywhere in the playoffs. Never got to a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
You got to, one AFC championship game with the Chargers in the Fouts era? Just one.
So was that the Holy Roller game?
No, I don't think it was the Holy Roller game, but that was the Fouts era.
Yeah.
So, tough call.
It was they lost in that Ice Bowl against the Bengals.
Yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's keep moving. Joey says, Deshaun Watson's shoulders is trash. Now the Achilles, he lost his leadership qualities with the way he lived his life.
Exactly. And by the way, one of my best friends works in radio in Cleveland, and he and I text on Sundays all the time, and he just says, they're dead. He said, the Browns fans are on suicide watch. They're so angry at Jim Haslam, and they're so fed up. I'll tell you how bad it was at the end of the game, and NFL players today on social media commented on it. When Watson went down, most everybody knew that it was an Achilles, the way he grabbed the back of his leg, and he wasn't hit. It was just he stepped into the pocket. When he stepped, his left leg crumbled and he was down. He grabbed his back of his ankle, and everybody said Achilles. When he was put on the stretcher and the game was stopped for, 12 to 18 minutes, and they finally carted him off, the fans booed him. It was brutal. The Browns players in a postgame in the locker room were just angry as hell at the dog pound for booing the quarterback. But Watson has been such a miserable failure, and then you add on all the crap that he did personally off the field, and the women and the lawsuits, and then the ownership traded 3 number 1 picks to get this guy and gave him a mega contract that has sentenced them to salary cap hell. Like I said, if they release him, if he can't play, they take a $73 million cap hit. $73 million. That's an all-time record in the NFL because Jim Haslam, quote, gave him this contract.
Well, he's not going to play this year.
No.
And will he be ready for next year?
They think he's going to undergo something called a brace Achilles surgery, which might alleviate. Evidently, Aaron Rodgers had the same thing. That's why Rodgers is back at a much quicker pace. And try the same thing with Deshaun Watson, but they won't know until they actually get in there and see.
Could they hypothetically cut him loose now while he's injured, or does the union have a rule against that?
No, you can't cut that. You're on he's under contract. The whole sucker's guaranteed. If they didn't want him as a player, they'd cut him. They don't want him as a person. They could cut him, but they're taking such a massive cap hit. You can't do that.
Well, they're not going to have him anyway. So
if he's on the active roster, still being paid, the cap figure is lower. It's not $73 million.
Oh,
if you release the guy, you get whacked big time.
So those are perverse incentives. The way that whole thing's set up.
Creative bookkeeping.
Yeah.
Thank you, agents. Okay, let's do a couple more here, and then we'll go to social media.
All right, here we go. Let's go to Manny. Maybe USC isn't that good in football. They left the Pac-12 to play in the Big Ten, and they still can't go undefeated.
And maybe Mike Riley's not a good game manager.
Lincoln Riley.
I'm sorry, Lincoln Riley. I keep saying Mike Riley.
That's the Beavers and Chargers coach.
Yeah, Mike's one of my good friends. Lincoln Riley's not a good game manager. What he really needs is a second voice in his headset. 2 weeks ago, he had all 3 timeouts in his pocket, and he let 1:20 run off the clock as they were trying to get into field goal range, and they wound up throwing a desperation interception. And then what happened this past weekend, where they wound up losing to Maryland, and on a 4th and inches, maybe in at the Maryland 40, on a 4th and inches, he tries a 57-yard field goal rather than try to pound it, get the first down with the marks, and you could, get 10, 12 yards in closer. Tried 57-yard field goal, blocked. And then Maryland took over, and Billy Evans went right down the field and scored. And all 4 of their losses have come in the final minute. Those are 4 losses. So Lincoln Riley needs somebody in his headset who's an administrative assistant to talk to him, because he's done a really piss-poor job in game management. They're 3-4. USC is 3-4.
And Maryland is like one of the bottom feeders of the Big Ten.
Exactly.
So yeah, that's got to be tough. That's got to be really tough. Let's keep moving. Callan has a correction for us. He said Seattle has a Super Bowl and an NBA title. The Super Bowl, I keep thinking of that one against the Patriots where Russell threw the ball at the end zone, and it got intercepted and ran back the whole way.
That was the Pete Carroll era.
Yeah,
but you got the Holmgren era too.
Okay, and then the NBA, the Sonics must have won it in the late 70s. Then
it had to be. Boy, my mind's too jumbled right now, but I'm trying to remember who the head coach was at that point in time.
Bernie Bickerstaff.
Well, there've been a bunch of coaches that came through there who were fairly successful at it. Jack Ramsey was in Portland. I'd have to go look it up. But
I remember they had a player, Slick Watts, that played for the Sonics, and he was bald, and I thought it was so clever when
Jack Sikma was a hell of a player.
Oh, Sikma, yeah, they had a lot of really good players. But the announcer that I would listen to when the Warriors would play the Sonics was Bill King, who was fantastic. And then whenever they had the pass, he would say outlet to Watts, and I just thought that was clever because it was like an electricity thing.
Yeah. Seattle's going to get an expansion team. I think that's almost a lock.
They deserve it.
Yeah. Well, they renovated what used to be known. I think it's called a Key Arena. They renovated that, and it's become kind of a modern, state-of-the-art facility. And I think the Oakview group, which is led by a longtime NBA and NHL executive Terry Lewicki. Oakview is also one's going to rebuild the sports arena down here in downtown San Diego.
Ah, okay.
They're helping finance it with Stan Kroenke. But Lewicki and his people renovated the Key Arena. And when I was doing the Seahawks, I remember going down there and say, boy, this is old. This is, where the Sonics used to play. And I think there was a behind-the-curtain deal made that Oakview, which is a very influential group, great success track record, that Oakview is doing its renovation, and they're going to get an expansion team. In fact, I think within a year, NBA will announce Seattle and Las Vegas for NBA expansion teams.
Vegas, man. Wow. Here's another quick little comment to fill in some blanks for us. This is from David. Larry O'Brien was also a politician for more than 2 decades and the U.S. Postmaster General.
Yeah, I think Larry was a Democrat in the Democratic Party, and I'd forgotten about the Postmaster General, but yeah, you kind of hit my head, and there it came. Okay, let's go to social media.
Social media. There's a lot of good stuff out here too.
You sure about that?
Yeah, I know. All right, let's. This is a good one here. Okay, this is from Worms Only, talking about the Chargers. He said, "Quote: Team that looks good but is actually bad." End quote. While you're wearing a Maple Leafs jacket is insane.
Well, are you writing us as a sports critic or a fashion critic? It doesn't really matter. Hey, I wear what I wear. If it's clean in the closet, I put it on. I don't get any bonus points for fashion statements. I get bonus points for content and opinions most times. In terms of the Chargers, who have you beaten? And even Arizona's not good. So if the Bolts get their fourth win tonight, great. If they get ambushed in Arizona, I go back to my statement, who you beaten. But that's unfair to Justin Herbert because I got so many people hurt. I mean, when you're on Thursday of game week and you got 16 guys that don't practice, I get access to the injury list every day. I said, wow, how the hell are they going to show up? So we'll just see. It's a 17-week season. I've had an inordinate number of injuries. A bunch of them are nagging. I mean, there's nothing catastrophic, but, Joey Bosa has not played since the second snap of opening day. And he's making all this money, and I think he's done at the end of the season. They're just not going to bring him back because he can't stay on the field, and he counts $30 million against the cap. Mm-hmm. So we'll see how they do against Arizona. Schedule gets a little bit tougher as we go forward. And in terms of my Maple Leaf look, what the hell's wrong with that? What does it say? I can't wear whatever team I want to wear. Last week was Dutch.
Like you say, you have a closet probably full of every team in every sport.
I don't own anything that doesn't have a logo on it.
Right. I mean, so I know just the social media comments, particularly on Instagram, are hilarious because people were criticizing what you're wearing. And if it's not the Maple Leafs, it's the Dodgers or whatever. Or they're people making cracks about you getting a haircut or something,
But the bowl of soup I got was really good with the haircut.
But the sports content, there are some people that legitimately respect what you bring to the table.
There's a hell of a lot of people disrespect me, too.
But that's all part of the smack talk, and it's just a lot of fun.
Okay, next one.
Okay, this is a question I'm curious about your answer, and this is from Jeff Chapman. He says, what do you think about men competing in women's sports?
It's a massive issue that has to be dealt with leadership, and I don't know how they're going to deal with it. They're talking about the transgender situation.
Yeah.
Closer to home, there's a situation at San Jose State with a volleyball player. He became a she, and she is so physically dominant compared to all the other teammates on the floor. And a number of schools led by Wyoming and I think Boise in the Mountain West forfeited or canceled their conference games against San Jose State's women's volleyball team because they have a transgender star. And it's just not there. It's everything. It's a global thing. Track and field. Are you going to allow a woman to try to qualify in the Olympics from Romania who had a transgender procedure? It's a man running in a woman's body. It's a big issue. And then it filters all the way down to the high school ranks, where I'm sure in some high schools there are issues about sex change operation, and should that athlete be allowed to compete as a girl when her genes were born as a boy? I mean, it's a tough call. And the NCAA has kind of thrown their hands up in the air and say, well, leave it up to the federations. The federations will make the decision. Then now you got courts and you got family lawsuits. A very, very complicated issue.
It is. It's way beyond the scope of sports. On one level, to me, this is like a denial of reality, that men are competing in women's sports. And for some people, they're accepting that when they're pretending that this man isn't really a man anymore. But I think what we're learning with science is that it's not as binary as we think it is. And there are some people like those boxers from, where were they from? In the Olympics. Mm-hmm. And they were women, but they still had male genes in their DNA. And now we're getting above my pay grade. So you're right. This is
you knew everything about everything.
You were the one that knows everything about everything.
In sports. But this has to do with, there's I'm trying to think if it's at the NCAA, there's a testing of athletes. There's a testosterone test that anybody who has gone through a sex change operation, he becomes a she. Their testosterone levels have to be lower for them to compete, and this is a gray area there as to I don't know how to explain the numbers, but if there is a man who became a woman and wants to compete at Stanford on their volleyball team, her testosterone levels have to be down here to match the T levels of women. And if they're not, she can't compete. It's a very complex.
That's getting weird. And then now you're going to have people.
Formula.
Yeah, and then you're going to have people, drug doping or trying to keep the T level up or down. Yep. That's a mess. Okay, let's keep going here. This is from BD's saying, remember less than a month ago, you said the Dodger way is broken.
That's right. That was more than a month ago when I wrote my columns about the Dodgers' epicenter of pitching injuries. And then right after I wrote my column, the LA Times did a phenomenal investigative piece about the number of Dodger pitchers who are broken down and how many times they've gone to the disabled list, etc. So the Dodger way, in terms of dealing with their pitching staff, even though they're getting ready for the World Series, has to be questioned. And they've indicated that they are going to do a top-to-bottom evaluation of how they acquire, who they acquire, how they train after they acquire them, what they demand of them. At the end of the day, are they demanding max effort on every pitch? Are they demanding they throw these brutal sweepers, which puts phenomenal stress on the forearm? Is that why they've had 8 elbow and forearm surgeries this year alone? So the Dodgers themselves admitted it's an epidemic, and they're going to take an evaluation and they're going to look at the situation. So just because the Dodgers are playing on Friday against the Yankees in the Fall Classic does not mean the Dodger way is perfect, or the Dodger way has not broken, because you go talk to all their pitchers. They got so many guys. They had 38 different pitchers this season. They had 8 surgeries now. Virtually every one of their young arms has had surgery. Most of them have yet to come back. They just lost Michael Grove, who's gone for a year. He's not going to pitch at all next season. He won 11 games, 12 games for them this season. And this comes on top of what happened to Buehler, what happened to Dustin May, etc. So Dodger way has to be evaluated. But I was right when I wrote the column, because they were a disaster. Now they're still playing because their hitters have carried them. But at the end of the day, we start the World Series on Friday, and the Dodgers may have 2 bullpen games in the World Series because they don't have enough pitchers. Dodger way is not correct.
Fire Dave Roberts?
No.
Especially if they win the World Series.
You're a wise ass from left field.
All right, let's go here. Well, this is a comment about the Raiders, and this is from Fitness Task. He says, we need the number 1 pick in the 2025 draft. Brady is pretty much calling the shots now. Hire Bill Belichick and draft Shedeur Sanders.
Well, I think the Sanders situation kind of links if they wind up where they are, but Carolina's also going to have the top pick. So there may be some competition if indeed Shedeur Sanders winds up being the right guy. There are some good quarterbacks that will be there. As we get to the end of the regular season, we'll start to zero in on who are the top quarterbacks in the NFL draft board. But they got to solve this, because they haven't had a good quarterback since Rich Gannon. And that's a long time ago. It's in the Gruden era. So they got to fix this roster. They got holes in a ton of places, and they got injuries on top of the holes. And I don't know that this is the right head coach. So, boy, Tom Telesco's got his hands full.
Big boss man, Bill Belichick. He's not coming back, though, is he?
He says he's going to coach next year. You know what? And he's from the Northeast Quadrant. And what might be open? Giants.
Oh, yeah.
What might be open? Jets. What might be open? Maybe Philadelphia.
Interesting.
So Belichick may have his choice if you're willing to give Belichick power and authority. I think that's one of the hidden questions. You're going to deal with him. You have to deal with his philosophy and my way or the highway. So, hey, listen, we hope you have enjoyed our Monday bonus podcast. Man, we covered a lot of things, from my haircut to my Dodger hoodie to his inability to have anything worthwhile listening from left field. We hope you've enjoyed our podcast. We're here Mondays and Thursdays at 1 p.m. Want you to share, want you to subscribe via YouTube. That way you'll get notifications and alerts every time we put something up on the YouTube channel, which is quite a bit. We want you to tell everybody what we're doing Mondays and Thursdays. Check my website, LeeHacksawHamilton.com. I write on it every day. First thing in the morning after your cup of coffee, open up my website. You'll get all the stories there are. We also want you to join our Hacksaws Insiders group. And you're on social media. Become part of my Twitter all-star team. It's at Hacksaw1090, Hacksaw1090. Hit the follow button. You'll know what's going on. You got anything you want to add to all the things we're doing on social media?
on social media, we got a ton of things going on. We're going to start doing a little more creative things with the One Man's Opinion and Best 15 in the Hacksaw's Insiders group. But I have a question. 2 games tonight, Monday Night Football. Pick 'em, pal.
I'll say Justin Herbert outguns Kyler Murray, but there could be an ambush in Arizona. And as much as I like the Colt hero and all the stuff that Baker Mayfield's doing, this is Baltimore, and that's Lamar, and that's Derek, and that's that coaching staff and that defense. I got Baltimore beating Tampa Bay, but interesting doubleheaders on Monday, kind of hard.
And the Chargers, you think are going to win?
I'm hoping for Herbert to have a big game, but
you were kind of waffling there a little.
Yeah, they could get ambushed.
Yeah, they could. Here we
listen, go. Thank you for being part of this podcast brought to you by Dixie Line Lumber and Home Centers. We will see you come Thursday. Have yourself a great evening. Thanks for being with us on Hacksaw's Headlines.
Join us again for Hacksaw's Headlines on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. And find the audio version on your favorite podcast app.
Touchdown, San Diego!
For more content, go to LeeHacksawHamilton.com.